Welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized. Today, we've got a very special guest. I know you hear me say that just about every week, but I'm not exaggerating here. Dr. Jay Staley. I had a chance probably 3-4 years ago to get to know Dr. Staley as he was working through the doctoral program at a university in the southern part of Indiana. We'll have a chance to talk with Dr. Staley a bit, but what a wonderfully talented and knowledgeable individual. I know with his leadership and his mind share and the expertise he's developed, probably through some lessons learned, as I have and you have as well, over these next 20 minutes plus the episode next week, there's going to be some knowledge that you can put to use in your life. Dr. Staley, great to see you, my friend, and thank you for being with me today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Dr. Staley was in education a few years back, and now you're not directly in education, you're more indirectly. Talk about Dr. Jay Staley and what he's doing today.
Okay, very good. So as far as where I started, so I spent 26 years in public education, started off right out of college teaching. That quickly led to an opportunity to move into an assistant to the principal / athletic director role. And then that led into an opportunity to move to central office to start off overseeing personnel, which then eventually led to a CFO and kind of moved me to the ranks of an assistant superintendent in charge of finance and operations. Everything that wasn't teaching and learning was under my purview at the school district. The thing I found was that I wore so many hats. The one I really enjoyed was school finance, and I was getting to use it less and less. And because of that, an opportunity came to join a company, Baker Tilly, which serves as a municipal advisor for school districts. And I took that leap of faith and that jump to try to work with schools. It can help me not only stay engaged with the school world, but I got to just focus on school finance. So far, it's been great. It'll be 2 years this January that I made that change, and I'm excited for what lies ahead.
You're involved, even though in an indirect role, almost on a daily basis in a number of things. But how does the role today differ when it comes to when you were in the public school system?
Yeah. So as far as my role is, so Baker Tilly has been known for debt issuances. So helping schools finance their debt, being able to get those debt obligations. So that's been the niche in the market. And so my role in joining the team was to help to provide some wraparound services. I've got about a dozen school districts that I'm the phone a friend, the thought partner, the advisor, the mentor, however you want to phrase it, of just helping new superintendents, new CFOs, new business managers just navigate school finance. That's been good for me because it helps me to keep my blade sharpened, so to speak, to be able to make sure that I stay up to date with all the changes and everything that's going on. The other thing that we have been actively involved in is just long-range planning for school districts. And so how do we sit down and develop a 5-year plan of, if you continue to do what you're doing, this is your financial path. And so are there other things that you want to do? That's the part that's exciting for me, is getting to that next step of how do you impact your community? So how can we look at program assessments? How can we look at the dollars coming in, the dollars coming out? Are they meeting the metrics that you want to? And if not, let's have some conversation on how we can change that course, and you can be the best stewards of funds that you're been responsible with for your school district.
But probably a number of other technical questions related to schools and financial aspects today, but let's back up a minute. When I first got to know you, I think you told me that you were a little bit surprised at the career path, the way it was going in that regard, although you found your niche, right?
I did,
but it
yeah.
seems to be a career path that just kept moving forward. Talk a little bit about some of your experiences, some of your ahas or learnings that has helped you along that way through the various transitions that you've had.
Yeah. So I go back to who's had those influences on me and where I have been. When I go back early on, my maternal grandfather, this is where it started. He grew up in Tennessee, grew up in the hills of Tennessee. His family lived in poverty. I guess that'd be the best way you could explain it from that. He had an 8th grade education. He moved to Indiana trying to find a better life for what ultimately would be his family, and started working in the manufacturing world. And so that's what he did. He worked at Allison's Transmission, made a great living as someone who didn't have a lot of education. The thing that he instilled in me was how important education was. And so that was one of the things that he regretted, was that he never graduated from high school. We always had those conversations of, hey, you need to better yourself in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's going to college, whether it's learning a technical trade, whatever it is, you need to find a way to prepare yourself. The other thing that I learned from him, so he was also a Southern Baptist minister as well. And so his conversations and counseling in those small churches is what he did. And you're talking with people when they're at their lowest of times at times, having courageous conversations with compassion or empathy. I think that was the thing that I learned from him the most, and just watching him interact. He was just very calm approach, wasn't judgmental about it, and just helped guide people along. And so that was just something I always naturally gravitated or wanted to do and emulate. Fast forward to where I ended up. And so going through high school, I knew I was going to college because of that. I started off in the banking and finance world. Classes were okay. It was great. I got an opportunity to be able to start coaching at my alma mater at Cascade High School. Darren Fisher was the football coach, allowed me to coach. I just fell in love in working with students, enjoyed that. And so it was, hey, let's transition out and let's go teach. And so that way I could be a teacher and a coach. And so I ran down that path for a period of time. And then when I was an athletic director, Dr. JT Koopman, who was our superintendent at the time, he was helping me time at a track meet. So his kids were running middle school track, and we had the mile run going on. We just got chatting, and we were talking about my interest in finance, and he's like, you realize there's a business side to schools? And I'm like, nope, never even thought about it that way. And so he's like, if we're willing to send you to some seminars, some trainings, whatever, would you have an interest in doing that? Corporation will pay for it. You just go see if you like it. I fell in love with it, and one thing led to the next. It just opened my eyes to this whole new world of school finance that allowed me to marry up a lot of different things. I'm thankful for all the many people that have been a part of those conversations along the way, because it certainly took a village to get me to where I am.
You mentioned Dr. Koopman. He later led the State Superintendents Association for a number of years. A lot of success, very well respected. Dr. Staley, when you were in the classroom, what was your content area? Where was your focus of teaching?
Yeah, so I was in the physical education realm. I taught PE and swimming. The school had just built a brand new natatorium. And so part of the way to get that built was to bring swimming into the curriculums. I did not have a swimming background. Back in that day, you just did whatever you could to get especially a PE job, right? There just weren't many of those physical education jobs around. And opportunity presented itself to join the team at Clark Pleasant. I taught PE and swimming. I also had a minor in social studies. I'm trying to think if I ever had a chance, maybe a sub here and there to be a social studies teacher, but most of my time was spent in the classroom or the gymnasium.
When you hear someone who's attracted to finance, you might expect to hear math as the classroom teacher, right? Probably not too many PE to finance pieces in that regard. You're setting a trend there, my friend.
Yeah, blazing a trail.
Yeah, I think you said 2 or 3 years now, you in the private sector, but talk a bit about the changes you've seen in the educational world from when you first started.
Oh, wow. I think it's like everything. You see the pendulum just swing back and forth, right? We're focused on, we're all in on this or we're all in on that. I think the things that we see today, we're at the extremes of everything. You kind of think of life as a bell-shaped curve, and it feels like everything now is you're either on one far extreme to one side or the other. And everything else is in the middle, but that's not where we are. It certainly provided challenges that bring it into school settings, and we've seen, my wife is a director of special education. We have a lot of great conversations talking about the needs that are going on with special needs students and the financing that needs to be available to be able to help them. You're just seeing lots more challenges. I guess that'd be the best way to phrase it, is how do we provide for the various different opportunities and all the needs that are there with less and less dollars, it feels like, coming into school districts.
Hey, you hit upon a very good point, Dr. Staley. My experience in the 1990s, I was in the industry of manufacturing at that point, and companies were going offshore and finding the low-cost regions. That left the charge to do more with less. It was even talked about in the 90s, but that's even much more so today in the 2020s in that regard. To your point, and I think it's very valid, a concern that I just have through my experiences and what I see in working with those individuals in this row is very much the extended challenges doing more with less, and coming out of COVID. And where is that social and emotional, not just for the students, but for our educators today?
Yeah, as we're looking at school budgets, so the things that we're talking about, so when you try to get trends, what are our trends in our school budgets? Where do we think we might be going? When you look at the last 4 years, so you had 2019, and for the state of Indiana, all of our funds changed. You really can't get a good baseline off 19's funds because they're all different. 2020 was a pandemic. 2021, we're coming out of the pandemic and you had all the changes. 2022, we had historically high rates as far as inflation. So where does that leave us? I don't know that we have a good baseline to measure. It feels that every turn there's frustration. And so it's trying to, how do you navigate the emotions of frustration with the facts that you have of the dollars, and how do you make all of this jive? And I think if anybody can figure that out and package it, it would be a really good opportunity to be able to help a lot of people.
That's a very valid point. Serving as a public school superintendent during the COVID era 2019, through COVID and coming out of COVID, nothing occurred in the economy or fiscally with what history should have told us would have happened, which goes right to your point. So really, history is resetting itself, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. You're navigating the new, what's the new norm? And within Indiana, schools, demographics changes is impacting it. Not only are we seeing less population in roughly 70% of school districts, you're seeing that impact county-wide as well. And so I think those influences are going to, it's going to be interesting to see how things move the next 10 years-ish, how public education is impacted and what's the reaction to it. How do we embrace some things versus maybe getting away from some traditional lenses that we've typically viewed things from?
Yeah, so that agility, that flexibility probably is at a point with what you're describing. It's being tested like never before.
Absolutely. And I think that's the hard part. Public education is, it's very traditional, right? If we look back at things that we do, and you can probably look back and it's rooted in 100+ years of the industry. And so how do we embrace some of those changes without just completely abandoning everything that we've done? Where's that kind of, where's the balance point with some of the practices that we do? As we're seeing within school finance world, so we have less dollars oftentimes coming in. We have less students for many school districts, but yet we have more staff. And so it's okay, where's the disconnect? And it's because of all the services that schools have been relied or called upon to be able to provide, and more extreme behaviors that schools are trying to address. We have more social, emotional counseling services that we're trying to provide. It's just, it doesn't, the data doesn't necessarily jive with what the emotions are that are going on. How do we recognize it and make some course corrections to be able to better help our communities as a whole, not just in the school, but community as a whole?
And I think it's important. Then I'll move away just from the industry of education, for lack of a better term right now, Dr. Staley, for the moment. The reality is the individual school, be it in rural state of location, middle state of location, or city state of location, that individual school is not alone in all this, right? There's a number of things occurring in obviously the industry that you and your company serve, but in many others within a number of states in our country.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and everyone's a little unique and from state to state with how they're funded or just where they are. But I think they're all facing the same thing. We had this influx of ESSER funds that came from the pandemic. The question becomes, how did schools use those dollars? Did they tackle them for one-time projects, or do they have staffing attached to it? My fear is that as we look across the country, there's a lot of schools that attach staff. And as you and I know, being district leaders, when I had the conversation before we did it at our school district of, hey, 3 years when this money runs out, those positions are going to have to get reevaluated. Maybe we won't have them. But as we know, you get used to having those services. And now all of a sudden it's, how do we manage without them? And so I think that's going to be a big challenge that's coming down for all schools across the country.
Yeah, very well said. So Dr. Staley, let me shift back a bit. We've talked a bit. You introduced the transition you made 2 or 3 years ago. What's a learning you took away in the transition? Just talking to you and knowing you as I have got to know you the past few years, I sense the transition's been very seamless for you. Going through your experience in transitioning from the direct public school corporation to the role you have now, what is some advice you might offer others out there who may be getting ready to go through something similar in their career?
Yeah, so I think back to, so I've gotten hooked on audiobooks now, right? So being in the role I'm in, I'm getting a lot more windshield time. And so I'm able to plug my audiobook in and listen and head down the road. And so book that I'm reading or listening to now, there was a quote that was in there that success lies on the other side of fear. I think that is one of the things that I am I'm a very conservative person. I like things to be exactly the way I want it. And so for me leaving somewhere after 26 years, I was in the same district for 26 years, let alone that was,
Good for you.
that,
Congratulations.
yeah. So that was a change. It was just, again, a leap of faith to be able to say, all right, what's behind this door? And let's go see. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, so be it. But I'm going to work as hard as I can to make it be successful. That would be my encouragement to folks is, one, prepare yourself, because I think that's one of the mottos that I've always had is, how do I prepare myself for what lies next? Whether that was getting another degree, or whether it was taking a course in something, or reading a book, or doing whatever. I think just how do you prepare yourself for opportunities that come across? My wife and I talk about this often. We had a pastor at one time that we were debating on, I remember the situation we were trying to wrestle with at the time. And the advice that we got was, the light is green until God says it's red. And so it was just perfect. Let's just operate our life in that we're going to keep going down paths. We're going to see what doors open. And if for whatever reason it closes, then so be it. We'll turn around and pivot and move on. Those are the things that I would encourage people is prepare yourself, and don't be afraid of fear, because just tackle it head on and good things will happen.
So thank you. Words of wisdom, certainly. When it came time for the decision piece, what was the process you went through?
I'm a data person, right? So first and foremost, it was making sure finances were going to work out, because I knew we had one kiddo in college and one coming out, and what was this going to look like? Just matching that up from a finance perspective. Lots of conversation with my wife. We talked through it and we ran numbers, but at the end of the day, it just kind of came to what was my passion in life. And I was at the point of my career where, I could have stayed another 5 or 6 years, did the typical retirement piece, and then maybe look for something after that. But I wanted a little more than that. I had enough of a runway left in my career that I could, in essence, have a second career. It was building on, it wasn't completely different. It was building upon things that I had already done. That ultimately, at the end of the day, was what nudged me in the direction, was just try something different. And while yes, it's different, it was familiar because I'm still working in an industry that I know. It's not like changing and I'm going into manufacturing. So it was familiar enough that while it was a leap, I don't know that it was a gigantic leap.
Your transition, whilst any transition significant in any aspect, it really was in your field of expertise still at that point. Not all transitions occur that way. Even if it's from a classroom, even if consider a classroom teacher moving into a building administrator, that sometimes is a major adjustment.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's just trying to identify what those adjustment points are going to be. Some you're going to be able to find quickly, and others are going to come along. For me, the biggest thing was, I'm a pretty reserved individual. I'm not a social media person. So I'm not a salesman. I don't consider myself a salesperson. Just going out and talking with school districts, I didn't want to have a feel of somebody's trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
I didn't like that as a CFO. It was, if I can provide value, I'd love to be a part of your team and be able to help you, but I'm not here to sell you an additional service that you don't need. If we can partner in some way that's beneficial, great. If not, let's stay connected. If I can ever help, please always reach out.
The Jay Staley I've known for several years now, that what you just described is probably something I would say has been very consistent. That's Jay Staley, constant, day in, day out, professionally and personally. Dr. Staley, I appreciate your time. I know it's a very busy period for you and your team. I'm so appreciative that you've agreed to stay around, and would like to build, as we return next week, would like to build on some areas we've hit upon in your career, but also in the industry of education today and your expertise, including leadership. Thank you again for your words of wisdom, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been Kevin Smith with Dr. Jay Staley on Leadership Synergized, and Dr. Staley again will be back next week. Thank you so much for all you do in representing leadership and representing those you serve. I appreciate you. God bless. Have a great day.